Part 1. First Contact Fallout. The sky burned crimson on what would later be called Arrival Day. Colonel Harlow Rhodes stood on the rooftop of the United Defense Command headquarters, watching the massive obsidian ships that had appeared in Earth's atmosphere 3 hours earlier. Their angular, crystalline forms blotted out the sun over major cities worldwide. Status report, Rhodes demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before her. Major Franklin kept his eyes on his tablet. 17 vessels in total, sir. They've positioned themselves over every major power center. Communications are scrambled across all military bands. Civilian networks still operational but flooded with panic. Rhodes nodded, her weathered face betraying nothing of the fear churning in her gut. At 53, she'd survived 3 wars, countless skirmishes, and even an assassination attempt during peace negotiations in Damascus. But this was different. And still no response to our hails, she asked. Nothing, Colonel. Wait, Franklin's eyes widened. Something's broadcasting on all frequencies. Every screen, phone, and digital display across the planet flickered simultaneously. The image that appeared made Rhodes's blood run cold. The creature on screen had a vaguely humanoid shape, but that's where similarities ended. Its skin was a shifting palette of blues and purples, with 6 eyes arranged in a crescent pattern above what might have been a mouth, or perhaps a breathing apparatus. People of Earth. The translation appeared as text while the creature's mouth parts vibrated. I am High Marshal Vortek of the Draxian Imperium. Your world has been selected for immediate integration. Your resources are now property of the Imperium. Your people are now assets of the Imperium. Resistance is unnecessary. You lack both the technology and will to oppose us. Rhodes clenched her jaw as the alien continued. We have studied your species extensively. You are divided, weak, and perpetually conflicted. You will surrender. It is the logical choice. The transmission ended abruptly. In the silence that followed, Rhodes turned to her staff, who looked to her with expressions ranging from terror to fury. Get me a secure line to all remaining command centers, she ordered. And find me anyone who knows anything about these Draxians. Within 30 minutes, Rhodes sat at the head of a hastily assembled war council. Digital screens showed military leaders from around the world, many transmitting from backup facilities or mobile command units. They've disabled our orbital weapons platforms, General Zhang reported from the Asian Coalition headquarters. Satellites are being systematically destroyed. Same in Europe, added Admiral Okafor. Navy vessels report weapons systems failing when targeted at the alien ships. They've got some kind of countermeasure technology. Rhodes listened intently, piecing together the grim picture. The Draxians hadn't fired a single shot yet, but they'd neutralized Earth's first line of defenses with terrifying precision. Dr. Vargas, she addressed the civilian scientist who had been ushered into the meeting. What can you tell us? The astrophysicist cleared his throat nervously. Based on initial readings, their technology is centuries beyond ours. Energy signatures indicate power sources we can barely comprehend. The ship's hulls appear to be composed of a crystalline metal alloy that... A deafening boom interrupted him as the building shook violently. Outside, a blinding purple beam lanced down from the nearest Draxian vessel, striking the military complex 3 miles away. The entire facility vaporized instantly, leaving nothing but a smoldering crater. It started, someone whispered. Rhodes straightened her uniform. No, it's not started. Not yet. She turned to the screens. Listen carefully. The Draxians believe we're divided and weak. They've studied our conflicts, our wars against each other. But they've missed something fundamental about humanity. She pulled up a tactical display. They're targeting military installations first, standard invasion protocol. But they're doing it systematically, region by region. That gives us time. Time for what? General Zhang asked. To surrender. Time to become what they don't expect, Rhodes replied. United. Within hours, the unthinkable happened. Nations that had been enemies for generations shared military secrets. Border disputes were forgotten as defense forces reorganized under joint command. Rhodes watched with grim satisfaction as the world did what the Draxians thought impossible, adapted. The first human counterstrike came 12 hours after the initial attack. It wasn't sophisticated or particularly effective, but it sent a message. A squadron of fighter jets, modified with hastily retrofitted electromagnetic pulse devices developed by Dr. Naomi Winter, managed to temporarily disable a Draxian scout ship over the Pacific. The downed vessel crashed into the ocean, where submarine teams recovered fragments of alien technology before the Draxians could retrieve it. The cost was high. Only 2 pilots survived, but humanity had drawn first blood. High Marshal Vortex's second broadcast came 3 days later. This time, the alien's tone had shifted from dismissive to annoyed. Your resistance is puzzling and futile, the translation read. Other species have submitted with minimal casualties. Your continued defiance will result in escalation. We had planned a measured integration. Now, we will demonstrate true power. Rhodes watched from an underground bunker as the Draxians made good on their threat. Beams of concentrated energy struck major cities worldwide. Millions died in the first wave. But instead of breaking humanity's spirit, the attacks galvanized it. They still don't understand, Rhodes told her assembled staff. They think fear will make us submit. They don't realize fear makes humans dangerous. As if to prove her point, reports flooded in from around the globe. Civilian mechanics were retrofitting farming equipment into anti-aircraft weapons. University chemistry departments were developing compounds that could potentially penetrate Draxian armor. Children were serving as messengers through sewers and underground passages, carrying information past alien surveillance. 1 week after arrival, the Draxians controlled 40% of Earth's surface, but they controlled 0% of its people. Colonel, Major Franklin interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Winter has something you need to see. On screen, the brilliant physicist's face appeared, exhausted but excited. Colonel Rhodes, we've deciphered part of their communication system, and I found something they never expected us to discover. She held up what looked like a circuit board infused with pulsing purple light. They're not invincible. And more importantly, they're scared of us. Rhodes nodded, the first genuine smile in days crossing her face. Excellent work, Doctor. It's time we showed them exactly why they should be. As the first part of humanity's true counteroffensive began to take shape, Rhodes thought of the Draxian High Marshal's condescending message. The aliens had made a critical error in their assessment of Earth. They had studied our wars but missed the lesson of them all. Humans don't know how to stay defeated. The battle for Earth had only just begun. Part 2. Operation Phantom Shield. The underground laboratory complex beneath the ruins of Denver hummed with frenetic energy. Dr. Naomi Winter hadn't slept in 36 hours, but adrenaline and determination kept her moving. Her fingers flew across holographic interfaces as she analyzed the alien technology salvaged from the downed scout ship. There's a pattern in their shield harmonics, she muttered to her team of exhausted scientists. It's not just advanced technology, it's fundamentally different physics. Professor Hikaru Tanaka, formerly of Tokyo University, leaned forward to examine the pulsing purple circuit. The energy flow doesn't follow conventional electromagnetic principles. It's almost like quantum entanglement on a macro scale. Naomi finished his thought. They're using paired particles to create instantaneous communication and power distribution. The laboratory door hissed open as Colonel Rhodes entered, accompanied by Lieutenant Darius Sullivan, a man whose scarred face and intense gray eyes spoke of battles fought long before the Draxians arrived. Please tell me you have something, Rhodes said, dispensing with formalities. Naomi straightened her back, pushing a strand of gray-streaked black hair from her face. At 47, she had been one of Earth's leading quantum physicists before the invasion. Now, she was humanity's best hope for technological survival. We can disrupt their shields, she announced. Not permanently, but long enough to do damage. Their technology relies on quantum synchronization, incredibly advanced, but vulnerable to specific frequency bursts. Sullivan stepped forward, his voice low and gravelly. Can we weaponize it? Already working on it, Naomi replied, gesturing to the adjoining workshop where engineers were modifying conventional weapons with alien tech. We're calling it Project Phantom Shield. A two-pronged approach, disruption devices to create vulnerabilities in their defenses, and retrofitted weapons that can exploit those gaps. Rhodes nodded slowly. Timeline: 72 hours for the prototypes. Maybe a week before we can begin limited production. We don't have a week, Sullivan interjected. The Draxians have started harvesting operations in occupied territories. They're not just taking resources, they're taking people. A grim silence fell over the room. Initial reports had confirmed the Draxians were abducting humans, supposedly for processing, a clinical euphemism that chilled everyone to the bone. 48 hours, Rhodes decided. That's all I can give you. Sullivan's resistance cells need these weapons immediately. Lieutenant Sullivan led his team through the ruins of what had once been suburban Chicago. 20 men and women moved like shadows through the darkness, each carrying conventional weapons modified with Dr. Winter's technology, crude but potentially effective. "Remember," Sullivan whispered to his squad, "aim for the joint sections of their exosuits. The disruption field will only work for 3 to 5 seconds. Make your shots count." They approached the Draxian Processing Center, formerly a shopping mall, now transformed into an alien stronghold. Hundreds of captured humans were held inside, awaiting whatever fate the invaders had planned for them. "Jackson, take position on the north side," Sullivan ordered. "Ramirez, you're with me. The rest of you know your assignments." Operation Phantom Shield would be the first coordinated global strike against the Draxians. Similar teams were positioning around the world, waiting for the signal to attack simultaneously. The element of surprise was their only advantage. Sullivan checked his watch, a simple mechanical timepiece chosen because it couldn't be tracked or jammed by alien tech. 3 minutes to 0 hour. Somewhere overhead, a Draxian patrol craft hummed, its searchlight sweeping the area. The team froze, pressing themselves against the rubble. The light passed within inches of Sullivan's position, then moved on. "That was close," whispered Ramirez, a former police officer whose family had been taken during the initial abductions. Sullivan merely nodded. He'd seen too much combat to waste energy on close calls. As a veteran of conflicts in Venezuela and the Korean Unification War, he understood that survival often hinged on emotionless efficiency. 30 seconds, he breathed into his comm unit. Across what remained of Earth's communication network, resistance cells counted down to the same moment. In hidden bunkers and makeshift labs, technicians prepared to activate the disruption signal, a planetary pulse that would, in theory, temporarily scramble Draxian quantum systems. 3, 2, 1. Sullivan pressed the activation node on his rifle. Around the world, thousands did the same. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, the night lit up as Draxian technology across the planet flickered and destabilized. "Go!" Sullivan shouted, all pretense of stealth abandoned. His team burst from hiding, charging toward the processing center. The Draxian guards, momentarily disoriented by their failing systems, reacted slowly. The first fell to Sullivan's modified rifle, its armor penetrated where seconds before it would have been impervious. The resistance fighters swarmed into the facility, engaging Draxian soldiers in brutal close combat. Sullivan moved with cold precision, each shot calculated. Around him, his team fought with the desperate fury of people with nothing left to lose. "We need to reach the central chamber," he called out. "That's where they're holding the prisoners." They fought corridor by corridor, room by room. The Draxian disruption effect was already beginning to fade, their technology adapting faster than Dr. Winter had predicted. Sullivan's team suffered casualties, good people falling to alien weapons that regained their lethal efficiency. Finally, they breached the central holding area. Hundreds of humans looked up in shock and hope as Sullivan's team burst in. Among the prisoners, Sullivan recognized faces from missing person reports that had flooded in before communications broke down. Scientists, engineers, leaders. The Draxians weren't taking random captives. They were selectively harvesting human intelligence. "Get these people out. Move," he ordered, positioning fighters to cover the escape. As prisoners rushed toward freedom, Sullivan noticed something strange. The Draxian guards weren't pursuing as aggressively as expected. It was almost as if, "It's a trap," he realized too late. "They wanted us to do this." Back at the command center, Colonel Rhodes received Sullivan's emergency transmission just as Dr. Winter burst into the room. "Colonel, we have a problem," the scientist said urgently. "The Draxians adapted to our disruption field in minutes, not hours. They wanted us to use it." "Explain," Rhodes demanded. "They were tracking the signal pattern. Every device we activated just gave away its position." Naomi pulled up a global map where thousands of red dots appeared, each representing a resistance fighter now exposed to Draxian forces. "They sacrificed a processing center to identify our operational cells." Rhodes's face hardened. "Tactical adaptation. They're learning." "There's more," Naomi continued. "We've intercepted new communications. The High Marshal has ordered something called protocol subjugation." Before Rhodes could respond, the bunker's warning systems blared. On monitors around the room, feeds showed new Draxian ships entering Earth's atmosphere, smaller, faster vessels deploying what looked like thousands of metallic orbs. "What are those?" Rhodes asked. Naomi's face paled as her instruments analyzed the readings. Neural disruptors. They're not trying to kill us anymore, Colonel. She looked up, horror in her eyes. They're trying to control us. As Operation Phantom Shield descended into chaos, resistance forces worldwide found themselves exposed and vulnerable. But in this moment of apparent defeat, something unexpected was happening in orbit. Space Commander Javier Ortega, leading Earth's battered orbital defense force from the hidden lunar base, was about to launch a counteroffensive the Draxians never saw coming. The war for humanity's independence was entering its next, bloodier phase. Part 3. The Orbital Gambit. Space Commander Javier Ortega stood in the observation dome of Artemis Base, the secret lunar installation that had somehow remained undetected by Draxian sensors. The 42-year-old former astronaut and military strategist watched Earth through reinforced glass, his homeland now a battlefield marred by alien occupation. The blue planet's night side was notably darker than before the invasion, entire cities gone dark, power grids destroyed or disabled. Status report on the fleet, he demanded, not turning from the view. Lieutenant Commander Prisha Sharma, his second-in-command, answered immediately. Operation Lazarus is at 89% completion, sir. We've salvaged and retrofitted 16 orbital platforms. The Prometheus vessels are armed and ready. Ortega nodded slowly. While the Draxians had focused their attention on ground warfare, humanity had quietly been rebuilding in space. The Prometheus project, repurposed mining vessels and scientific platforms converted into makeshift warships, represented Earth's desperate gambit. And the package from Dr. Winter? He asked. Delivered via the emergency shuttle last night. Her team managed to transmit the technical specs before protocol subjugation began. Sharma's voice faltered slightly. We've lost contact with her bunkers since then. Ortega finally turned, his dark eyes reflecting the distant fires burning on Earth's surface. Of Spanish and Brazilian descent, he had the bearing of a man accustomed to making impossible decisions. The gold wedding band on his finger, his husband was somewhere in occupied territory, was the only personal touch on his otherwise regulation appearance. Show me the current Draxian fleet positioning. A holographic display materialized between them, showing the 17 massive vessels still positioned above Earth's major urban centers. Now they were accompanied by hundreds of smaller craft deploying the neural disruptors, devices designed to subvert human minds directly. Their flagship? Ortega inquired. The vessel designated Alpha remains in geosynchronous orbit above what used to be Geneva, Sharma replied. Our intelligence suggests High Marshal Vortek is aboard. Ortega studied the display, mentally calculating odds and variables. The Prometheus fleet was outnumbered and outgunned by conventional metrics, but conventional thinking wouldn't win this war. Send the activation code to all Prometheus vessels, he ordered. It's time to remind the Draxians that humans don't just fight on the ground. High Marshal Vortek regarded the holographic display of Earth with satisfaction. The deployment of neural disruptors was proceeding exactly as planned. Soon, the troublesome resistance would collapse as humans became unwilling servants of the Imperium. Subjugation efficiency at 27%, Marshal, reported Subcommander Zek. Projected completion within 72 hours. Vortek's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of approval in Draxian culture. Unlike most of his species, who viewed the conquest of lesser races as merely efficient resource acquisition, Vortek took personal pleasure in domination. Humans had been particularly satisfying to break, their initial defiance making their eventual submission all the sweeter. The prisoner has been prepared for interrogation, Zek continued. Shall I have her brought to you? Yes, Vortek replied, his translator converting the complex vibrations of his speech apparatus into human language. This Dr. Winter may have valuable insights into their resistance technology. Minutes later, the laboratory door slid open as guards dragged in a battered but defiant Naomi Winter. Captured during the raid on her bunker, she had already withstood 2 rounds of questioning. Dr. Winter, Vortek greeted her with mock civility. Your Operation Phantom Shield was an impressive attempt. Flawed, but impressive. Naomi lifted her head, meeting the alien's gaze without flinching. If you're going to kill me, get on with it. Kill you? How wasteful. Your mind is far too valuable for that. Vortek moved closer. Your species has a remarkable capacity for innovation under pressure. We've observed this trait across many worlds, but humans excel at it. This is why we harvest your kind selectively. Harvest, Naomi repeated with disgust. You mean enslave? A crude term. We prefer integrate. Your brightest minds will serve the Imperium's expansion, your genetic material will enhance our biological understanding, and your cultural uniqueness will be preserved in our archives. How generous of you, she responded sarcastically. Vortek was about to reply when an alarm blared through the ship. The holographic display flickered, then revealed multiple new signatures appearing near Earth's moon. What is this? He demanded, all 6 eyes widening in surprise. Sub-Commander Zek frantically analyzed the data. Unknown vessels, Marshal. They appear to be human constructs, but significantly modified. Vortek stared in disbelief as 16 cobbled-together spacecraft emerged from behind the moon, accelerating toward Earth at impossible speeds. Impossible. We destroyed their orbital capabilities. Naomi smiled for the first time since her capture. You missed a few. Aboard the lead Prometheus vessel, designated Vengeance, Commander Ortega strapped himself into the command chair. The ships were barely space-worthy by peacetime standards, hastily retrofitted with salvaged Draxian technology and operated by skeleton crews of military and civilian volunteers. All vessels report ready, Commander, Sharma announced from her station. Winter's disruption technology is integrated into our main systems. Begin approach pattern Delta, Ortega ordered. Remember, we need to get close enough for the disruption field to penetrate their quantum shields. The Prometheus fleet accelerated toward Earth, specifically targeting the smaller Draxian vessels deploying neural disruptors. The element of surprise gave them a critical advantage. The alien ships reacted slowly, clearly confused by the appearance of human spacecraft. Draxian vessels breaking formation, reported the tactical officer. They're moving to intercept. Hold course, Ortega commanded. Activate disruption field on my mark. Now, throughout the fleet, Dr. Winter's technology activated, but with a crucial modification. Instead of the brief pulse used during the ground assault, the orbital version generated a sustained field, continuously adapting to Draxian countermeasures thanks to algorithms Naomi had developed before her capture. The effect was immediate and devastating. The nearest Draxian vessels lost power, their quantum-based systems failing catastrophically. The neural disruptors fell dormant, sparing thousands of humans from mental subjugation. Target the deployment vessels first, Ortega ordered. We need to stop those disruptors from reaching the population centers. The Prometheus ships engaged, firing weapons cobbled together from Earth technology and reverse-engineered alien components. They weren't elegant or sophisticated, but against shields that had suddenly failed, they were lethally effective. Sir, Sharma called out. The Draxian flagship is launching interceptors. At least 300 of them. Ortega grimaced. The Prometheus fleet could handle the smaller vessels, but not the full might of the Draxian armada. Deploy countermeasures. Tell Apollo and Artemis to begin Phase 2. Aboard the Draxian flagship, Vortek watched in fury as the human vessels destroyed his neural disruptor deployment ships. How are they disrupting our shields? They shouldn't have this technology. Dr. Winter laughed openly now, despite the guards restraining her. You made the same mistake every invader makes. You underestimated what humans can accomplish when backed into a corner. Vortek struck her across the face. Your orbital assault is suicide. Even now, our interceptors will destroy your pathetic fleet. Maybe, Naomi admitted, wiping blood from her lip. But they've already accomplished their mission. What mission? Vortek demanded. The answer came in the form of a massive energy surge detected at the edge of the system. While the Prometheus fleet had drawn the Draxians' attention, a second human operation had been underway, the activation of Earth's last resort weapon, hidden in the asteroid belt. As Vortek realized the true nature of humanity's orbital gambit, his mandibles clicked in what might have been the Draxian equivalent of fear. The humans hadn't been fighting to win, they'd been fighting to buy time. The real counterattack was just beginning. Part 4. Minds and Machines. Engineer Lucia Flynn crouched inside the cramped maintenance shaft of Asteroid Base Daedalus, her hands working feverishly to connect the final components of what the Resistance called humanity's last hope. At 31, the former quantum computing specialist had never imagined her career would lead her here, deep in the asteroid belt, assembling a weapon that violated half a dozen pre-invasion international treaties. Power coupling secure, she muttered into her calm, voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. Beginning synchronization sequence. Across the chamber, Dr. Victor Ndego monitored the readings on a jury-rigged console. Quantum field stabilizing. We're at 87% alignment and climbing. The device they were activating, codenamed Nemesis, represented the culmination of 6 weeks of desperate innovation. After studying the salvaged Draxian technology, Lucia had made a breakthrough discovery. The aliens' quantum communication network could be hijacked and overwhelmed with a sufficiently powerful countersignal. Prometheus Fleet reports heavy casualties, came the voice of their communications officer. 6 vessels lost. They're requesting status update. Lucia gritted her teeth. People were dying to buy them time. Tell Commander Ortega we need 3 more minutes. Just 3 minutes. The asteroid base shuddered violently, sending tools floating in the low-gravity environment. They found us. Ndego shouted. Draxian interceptors approaching from Sector 7. Keep working, Lucia ordered, her fingers never pausing in their intricate adjustments. If we don't finish this, none of it matters. Another explosion rocked the base, closer this time. Emergency lights flashed as sections began decompressing. The outer defenses were failing. Alignment at 95%, Ndego reported, his voice strained but professional. Quantum entanglement matrix holding stable. Lucia connected the final circuit, then sealed the housing with practiced movements. Nemesis is online. Initiating targeting sequence. On her display, the device's AI interface activated, mapping the entire Draxian fleet's quantum network. Every ship, every weapon, every neural disruptor, all connected through instantaneous quantum entanglement. It was their greatest strength, and now, their catastrophic vulnerability. Target acquired, the AI confirmed. Awaiting execution command. Lucia took a breath, thinking of her family in occupied Toronto, of all humanity had lost. Execute. The Nemesis device pulsed once, then emitted a silent wave of quantum interference that traveled instantaneously through the Draxian's own network. Unlike the localized disruption fields used previously, this attack struck their entire system simultaneously, exploiting the very interconnectedness that made their technology so advanced. On the bridge of his flagship, High Marshal Vortek convulsed as every system around him failed simultaneously. Emergency lights flickered and died. Gravity generators faltered. Most critically, the neural links connecting him to the fleet's command structure overloaded, sending excruciating feedback through his sensory apparatus. What is happening? He gasped, 4 of his 6 eyes blinded by the neural surge. Dr. Winter, still restrained nearby, felt nothing. The attack specifically targeted Draxian neural frequencies. That, she said with quiet satisfaction, would be humanity fighting back. Across the Draxian fleet, chaos erupted. Their technology wasn't just failing, it was turning against them. Neural interfaces meant to control humans now overwhelmed Draxian minds with contradictory commands. Weapon systems targeted their own vessels. Communication channels broadcast human resistance messages. Subcommander Zek stumbled to his feet, blue ichor leaking from his breathing orifices. Marshal, we must initiate emergency protocols. The humans have weaponized our own network against us. Vortek struggled to focus his remaining functional eyes. Never in the Imperium's 1,000-year expansion had they encountered such a devastating countermeasure. Primitive species simply didn't develop technologies capable of this level of sophisticated attack. Sever all quantum connections, he ordered. Revert to isolated systems. But the command came too late. The Nemesis attack had already compromised their core protocols. Attempts to disconnect from the network only accelerated the cascade failure, spreading corruption through backup systems and redundant channels. Vortek realized with dawning horror that the humans had accomplished something unprecedented. They had reverse-engineered and weaponized Draxian quantum technology in mere weeks, a process that had taken his species centuries to perfect. You've been watching us kill each other for generations, Dr. Winter said, somehow knowing his thoughts. You thought that made us weak. It didn't. It made us experts at identifying vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Aboard the Vengeance, Commander Ortega watched in amazement as Draxian ships began to drift, their propulsion and guidance systems offline. The few remaining Prometheus vessels regrouped, preparing to capitalize on the enemy's sudden vulnerability. Nemesis deployment successful, Lieutenant Commander Sharma reported, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Engineer Flynn reports total quantum network collapse across the Draxian fleet. Casualties? Ortega asked. Asteroid-based Daedalus took heavy damage. Flynn and Dr. Ndago managed to evacuate with the core team, but, she paused, we lost 17 personnel. Ortega closed his eyes briefly, honoring their sacrifice. Have all remaining vessels target the Draxian flagship. It's time we spoke with High Marshal Vortek directly. The surviving human ships converged on the massive Draxian command vessel, now drifting helplessly in orbit. Without their quantum shields and weapons systems, the once invincible aliens were suddenly vulnerable. Sir, Sharma said hesitantly, incoming transmission from the surface. Colonel Rhodes is alive. She's coordinating a global ground offensive against the disoriented Draxian forces. For the first time since the invasion began, Ortega allowed himself a smile. Put her through. Colonel Rhodes appeared on screen, her uniform torn and dirty, but her expression fiercely triumphant. Commander, Dr. Winter's plan worked. The neural disruptors have failed. Ground forces are retaking key positions worldwide. What about the subjugated civilians? Ortega asked. Recovering. The neural control was incomplete. People are fighting it off now that the signal's weakened. Rhodes looked past him, to the view of the disabled Draxian fleet. Is that what I think it is? Yes, Colonel. We have them. Ortega straightened in his chair. What are your orders regarding the Draxian command? Rhodes's expression hardened. Bring me High Marshal Vortek. It's time humanity delivered terms of surrender. Hours later, in the ruins of what had once been the United Nations headquarters in New York, High Marshal Vortek stood before a council of human leaders, his imposing frame now diminished without the support of his technology. Dr. Winter and Engineer Flynn stood nearby, alongside Colonel Rhodes and Commander Ortega, the architects of humanity's improbable victory. The terms are non-negotiable, Rhodes stated flatly. Complete withdrawal of all Draxian forces from Earth space. Return of all human captives. Reparations for the damage inflicted. And recognition of Earth as a sovereign world, permanently exempt from Imperium expansion. Vortek's mandibles clicked in what might have been indignation. The Imperium does not surrender to lesser species. Then the Imperium will learn something new today, Dr. Winter replied. Because we're not giving you a choice. The Nemesis protocol remains active. We can trigger it throughout your empire using your own quantum network. Every Draxian ship, colony, and outpost would experience what your fleet just endured. Lucia Flynn stepped forward, holding a datapad. We've already transmitted the activation codes to resistance cells we established on your vessels. Your empire is now compromised from within. It was a bluff, mostly. The Nemesis technology couldn't actually reach beyond the solar system. But the Draxians didn't know that, and the fear in Vortek's remaining functional eyes suggested he believed it entirely possible. You would destroy an empire that spans 1,000 worlds, he asked. No, Colonel Rhodes answered. We just want our world back. The question is whether your pride is worth the fall of everything your species has built. For the first time in recorded Draxian history, a High Marshal bowed to the will of those they had sought to conquer.